living in London was really quite sort of pivotal for me because being in the East End, where in Hackney, where there was roughly 10,000 artists at the time, you suddenly realise that you need a combination of things to be an artist. One is you need to be very talented. The other is you need to be very driven. You also need to be supported and connected. And I think if you don't have a combination of those things, then your chances of actually progressing as an artist are pretty slim, really. Now, the positive side of that, though, is that if you're in that sort of environment, you have to ask yourself, well, what is it that I have to contribute? Otherwise, you can pretty much get out of the game. But I think the artist generally needs to embody some kind of zeitgeist in themselves. So they have to be representative of a culture, of a concept, of a subculture, and then that needs to be a grouping that's going to have some currency within discourse. But what I'm talking about is if you're going to become an artist and you want to think about having a sustained career, there are a number of things that you need to be aware of, and you need to work out how you operate within those structures. It's not enough simply to go into your studio and to produce work. I think anyone who's worked as an artist and also as a curator and an arts writer, in fact, it's not just limited to that sphere, will have that experience in the art world of trying to get their work out there and being completely stonewalled and thinking this is impossible. So the question really is, how do I connect with a curator? What will make them interested in my work? And the first thing to know is that a direct approach to a curator is probably not going to work. Now, that happens for a number of reasons. One is there are so many artists that it's very difficult for a curator to give their time over to looking at everybody's work all the time. So the next thing to think about then, I think, is context, so that when you're graduating as a student, you should think about the kinds of artists that you admire, and these could be your peers, and the kinds of artists that you like to show with. And so I think this is where the role of the artist as curator starts to emerge, because if an artist can also not only produce their work, but also be aware about the context that their work speaks to and operates in, and then they start to create shows that are based around the context that their work operates in, then they have something that may start to become of interest to other curators. And I think particularly if they document their work as well, so produce a catalogue for the show. But that's not enough in itself. It's something that you have to do, and you have to continually do that. And even no matter how small the show is, to always produce it to the highest standard that you can, so that there is always something that other people will look to and say, that was really good. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the local Scout Hall or at MoMA in New York. It's the same standard applies, because there's really the art dealers, the art fairs, the relationships between the work that is being shown at art fairs and the work that is being picked up in biennales. And then there's also work that is not being picked up by commercial galleries, but also has a very interesting life in institutional circuits. For me, I think for a serious artist, for a serious young artist, the art market presents an enormous number of traps. And that is primarily because over the last 15 years, money has come into play so aggressively in the art market that the kinds of conversations that you hear at major international art fairs has nothing to do with art. In fact, art is the last thing on the list, maybe a little bit higher on the list than artists, but it's really about money and it's about prestige. And this is a very it's a sticky trap for artists to stumble into that and to imagine that they, even if they have a career where their works are selling for colossal prices, that this actually amounts to a serious art practice. And in fact, there are, at the same time as this sort of dominance of the art market, there is also circuits where artists' work is being taken up very seriously in institutional contexts, and these artists may have no commercial representation whatsoever. So this is really quite an interesting area, because it brings us to the issue of what is the role of art in society. Is it simply an expensive product that we aspire to buy and most of us can't buy? Or does the artist actually have a very productive role in the life of their society, where they might act in the role of a philosopher or somebody who is an agent of change? So I think the artist needs to look at, well, what will be the life that I will have as an artist, and what will be the contribution that I make? So the five things that I see that you need as an artist if you're going to have a sustained career is: you need to be talented, you need to be absolutely driven, you need to be politically privileged, you need to be supported,
and connected.
and connected.